I sold you my soul to save my sister, not to help you hide 312 others. Your only rule was honesty. Did you know this contract could free them all?
Yes. Freeing them will break the crown's power and may cost me the throne.
Then choose.
Your sister is safe. Whatever happens next.
Your choice is finally free. And my soul? If what you feel is real.
Set every soul free.
Hours earlier, before the silver contract placed a king on trial, she believed money was the only thing standing between her sister and a future. 28-year-old Emily Carter stopped beneath the emergency entrance of St. Matthew's Medical Center and stared at the elderly man standing beside a silent black sedan. Cold October rain swept across the nearly empty parking lot, soaking the sleeves of her thrift store jacket and the folder of denied insurance appeals pressed against her chest. Upstairs, her 21-year-old sister Sophie was fighting a rare illness that had resisted every standard treatment. The hospital would continue keeping her stable, but the specialist who could provide the next therapy was leaving in 48 hours, and the treatment could not begin without funding. Emily had worked breakfast shifts at a neighborhood diner, cleaned offices after dark, and stocked grocery shelves on weekends. She had sold their car, emptied the small savings account their mother had left them, and skipped enough meals that Sophie had started noticing. None of it had closed the gap. "Who are you?" Emily asked. The stranger opened an ivory envelope sealed with black wax. The crest showed a crown encircling a white rose. "My name is Tobias. I represent the Black Hollow Foundation and the man who established it." Emily had submitted an emergency request to the foundation 3 days earlier, along with dozens of other applications. She had never received an answer. Tobias handed her a card bearing an address in the mountains and a time, 11 o'clock that night. Beneath it, one sentence had been written in dark ink. "Come only if you are prepared to hear the full cost." Emily almost tore the card in half. Then her phone rang. Sophie's physician explained that the foundation had just guaranteed another night of specialized care, while Emily considered a private offer. No treatment would be stopped if she refused, and no one at the hospital knew what the offer involved. That small act of mercy frightened Emily more than an obvious scam would have. At 10:45, she drove a borrowed car through the iron gates of Black Hollow Manor, 30 miles beyond the city and high above the Blue Ridge Forest. Golden lanterns illuminated stone walls, white rose gardens, and tall windows darkened against the night. Inside, silent attendants guided her through marble corridors lined with portraits whose subjects shared the same pale skin and unnaturally still eyes. At the far end of a candlelit hall, a man rose from an obsidian chair. Lucian Ashcroft appeared to be in his mid-30s, tall and composed in a black suit, with long dark hair and silver-gray eyes. He made no theatrical display of what he was. He simply looked at her with the weary attention of someone who had been expecting her and wishing she would not come. "You are the Vampire King?" Emily asked. "I am." His voice was quiet, but every attendant in the hall became still. Lucian motioned toward a table holding a leather contract and a silver pen. "Before we speak, you should know 3 things. You are free to leave. No one will follow you. And the help already given to your sister will not be withdrawn." Emily kept both hands around her damp folder. "But the treatment that can save her depends on this." "Yes." "Then freedom is a generous word." A flicker of regret crossed his face. "It is still your choice, and I will not pretend the choice is fair." He opened the contract to a plain language summary. If Emily signed, Black Hollow would fund Sophie's treatment, provide a specialist from its private medical network, and cover follow-up care. Emily's natural life, body, decisions, and relationships would remain her own. After her natural death, however, her soul would enter service to the crown under laws written centuries earlier. No hidden clause shortened her life. No demand required affection, marriage, or obedience to Lucian personally. Eleanor, the manor's silver-haired steward, stood nearby as an independent witness and invited Emily to read every page. Emily did. She asked what service meant, how long it lasted, and whether Sophie's care could ever be revoked. Lucian answered each question directly. The final answer was the one that hurt most. The crown's claim endures until the crown releases it. Emily pictured Sophie asleep beneath pale hospital lights, still trying to make jokes whenever Emily looked frightened. Can you promise the treatment will work? No honest physician can promise that, Lucien said. I can promise she will receive the best chance that exists beginning tonight. The clock above the fireplace showed 11:53. Emily reached for the pen. Lucien's hand closed over the contract before she could sign. He did not touch her. There is one truth I owe you first, he said. I have presented bargains like this before. I have never wanted anyone to accept. Emily met his ancient eyes and pulled the contract gently back toward her. Then tonight, we both do something we never wanted. Emily read the final page once more while the minute hand moved toward midnight. The terms remained as terrible as they had been the first time. They also remained clear. Eleanor asked whether she understood them, and Emily said yes. Lucien asked whether anyone had threatened, commanded, or deceived her into signing. No, Emily answered. I hate the bargain, but I understand it. She placed the silver pen against the line and wrote Emily Carter. The instant the final letter formed, dark ink flashed silver. A cool wind moved through the sealed hall, hundreds of candles bent in the same direction, and an ancient bell rang 3 times beneath the manor. Lucien released a breath that sounded almost like shock. The black wax seal at the bottom of every former contract displayed in the hall remained crimson. Emily's seal turned bright silver. What happened? She asked. Lucien lifted the parchment without touching the glowing mark. The contract changed. You said there were no hidden clauses. There were not. His gaze moved across symbols appearing along the page's edge. These words were not here. Council messengers appeared at the doors before anyone summoned them. One bowed deeply. Your Majesty, every royal seal in the valley answered the awakening. The council requests an immediate audience. They can wait, Lucien said. The messenger glanced at Emily, visibly startled, then withdrew. Emily stepped closer to the contract. A sentence had emerged beneath her signature in elegant silver lettering. Truth binds the crown before it binds the bearer. What does that mean? She asked. I do not yet know, Lucien said. The admission came without hesitation. Then find out. I did not trade away my future to become the center of a mystery no one will explain. Something like approval softened his expression. Agreed. He led her into a smaller study where shelves of old books surrounded a quiet fireplace. The room held a desk, 2 worn chairs, and a kettle warming beside the fire. It felt less like a royal chamber than the private refuge of a man who had spent too many years alone. Lucien poured tea for her but did not ask her to calm down. Instead, he placed the contract where they could both see it. Soul bargains were created before I inherited the crown, he explained. I restricted them, but the magic that enforces them is tied to the same seal that protects this kingdom. I have never found a way to end one without endangering every life under that protection. Emily studied him. So you dislike the system but you still use it. That is the truth. Why answer my application? Lucien looked toward the fire. Your sister's medical request reached the foundation. The Crown recognized that something within our private archive could help her treatment. Ancient law required an exchange before I could release it. What did you have? A compound developed by physicians who have studied rare human illnesses for generations. It is not a magical cure. It allows the treatment Sophie already needs to work without overwhelming her body. There is only enough for 1 full course. The explanation was extraordinary, but it had limits. Emily preferred it to a miracle without rules. At midnight, her phone rang. Sophie's physician sounded cautious but hopeful. The specialist had arrived. Funding had cleared. The first stage of treatment would begin before dawn, and Sophie's condition had stabilized enough to proceed. Emily closed her eyes as relief moved through her so strongly that she had to sit down. She is not cured, the physician warned. The next 72 hours matter. But she has a real chance now. That is all I asked for, Emily whispered. After the call ended, Lucien remained across the room, giving her space. Emily wiped her eyes and looked at the silver contract. When does your service begin? Not tonight. Your life remains yours. Then why must I stay here? You do not have to. But until the silver seal settles, the council may try to question you. This manor is the one place where they cannot do so without your permission. Emily considered leaving for the hospital, But the treatment wing would be closed until morning, and she did not want royal strangers arriving near Sophie. I will stay until I can see her. Lucien nodded. Eleanor will prepare a room, and a car will take you to the hospital at sunrise. He paused, and his voice became more serious. There is only one rule between us. Never lie to me. Emily almost laughed at the simplicity of it. You purchased my soul, and your only rule is honesty? Honesty is the only thing power cannot safely command. He held her gaze. The rule applies to me as well. Ask me a direct question, and I will answer truthfully. On the table, the silver sentence brightened as if the contract had heard him. Then a second line slowly appeared beneath it. What the king withholds, the bearer may one day demand. I am not afraid of you, Emily said, and the silver mark beneath her signature immediately darkened. Lucien's eyes moved to the contract, then back to her. That was a lie. The words were not accusing. That made them harder to dismiss. Emily folded her arms. I am standing in a vampire's manner after selling my soul. Of course I am afraid. I simply do not intend to let fear make my decisions. The silver lettering returned to its quiet glow. Lucien inclined his head. That distinction matters. Does the contract punish every imperfect sentence? No. It responds when either of us uses a lie to control the other's choice. Emily looked sharply at him. Either of us? I told you the rule was mutual. You also said you did not know what the silver language meant. I did not. But the contract has now made that much clear. Emily did not fully trust him, yet his answers never arrived with the smooth confidence of a man inventing them. He seemed more unsettled by the silver contract than she was. Eleanor soon arrived and escorted Emily toward a guest chamber. Along the way, she explained the manor's practical rules. Most of its residents were vampires, but every attendant Emily saw worked there by choice. The darkened windows filtered direct sunlight, allowing the household to remain active during the day, though Lucien and the older vampires grew weaker beneath it. No one entered a guest's room without permission. No one fed from humans at Black Hollow. The simple explanations made the impossible place feel governed rather than chaotic. They passed a portrait of a plainly dressed young woman standing beside a dark-haired king. A small silver rose had been painted over the woman's heart. Who was she? Emily asked. Eleanor's expression softened. Maravalli, the last person associated with the silver contract. What happened to her? The official record says she disappeared 600 years ago. And the unofficial record? Eleanor glanced toward the portrait. Someone worked very hard to erase it. Before Emily could ask more, 5 members of the royal council approached from the opposite corridor. Their formal clothes belonged to no single period, as if each had stopped following human fashion in a different century. A tall councilwoman with white blonde hair studied Emily with chilly precision. So this is the mortal who awakened the crown. Emily straightened. My name is Emily Carter. Lady Seraphine Voss, the woman replied. I chair the council that keeps this kingdom from being undone by impulse. Her gaze settled on Emily's left hand. No mark was visible there yet. Did His Majesty tell you what a silver contract can do? He told me he does not know. Seraphine's expression tightened. Then one of you has already misunderstood the rule. Eleanor stepped between them without aggression. Miss Carter has not consented to council questioning. Seraphine's companion stopped. The boundary was evidently real. Consent, Seraphine repeated. A modern word for a very old danger. Emily refused to step back. If you know something that affects my sister or me, say it plainly. The contract may give you standing no human has held for centuries. It may also force the king to choose between one mortal soul and the protection surrounding thousands of our people. That is not plain. That is a threat shaped like an explanation. For the first time, one of the other council members almost smiled. Seraphine did not. The council will meet within the hour. His Majesty may invite you, but I advise you to remain outside. Once you hear the old law, you cannot return to ignorance. Ignorance was never one of my choices tonight. Seraphine studied her for another moment, then continued down the corridor. Inside the guest chamber, Emily found fresh clothes, food, and a phone charger beside the bed. Nothing had been chosen in her size by magic. Eleanor explained that Tobias had asked the Foundation's hospital liaison for practical details after Emily accepted the invitation. The answer removed one unsettling mystery. Emily stood at the balcony window and called the hospital. Sophie was awake long enough to complain about the terrible gelatin and ask where Emily was. "I am handling the funding," Emily said. "Did you rob a bank?" "Nothing that simple." Sophie laughed, then grew quiet. "You sound scared." Emily almost said she was fine. The silver sentence on the contract, resting across the room, began to dim. She stopped herself. "I am scared," she admitted. "But the doctors have what they need now, and I will be there in the morning." The seal glowed again. Beyond the glass, dozens of figures crossed the courtyard toward the council wing. A bell rang once. Eleanor entered with concern in her eyes. "His Majesty has requested your presence. The council found the missing clause, and they believe your contract did not create a servant." She looked toward the silver parchment. "They believe it created an equal claim upon the crown." The circular council chamber held 12 carved chairs, but no seat had been prepared for Emily. Lucian noticed before she spoke. He moved the chair at his right side away from the table and offered it to her. "She is not a prisoner or a petitioner," he said. "If you discuss her future, she sits among you." Emily accepted the chair because refusing would have made Seraphine's point for her. Moonlight filtered through the crystal dome, scattering silver patterns across the polished floor. The oldest council member opened a narrow volume bound in white leather. "A crimson contract transfers a human soul to the crown after natural death," he began. "A silver contract recognizes a sacrifice made solely for another person. It does not erase the bargain. It gives the signer the right to test whether the crown is worthy to hold it." Emily looked at Lucian. "How?" "The surviving page does not say," he answered. Seraphine tapped the book. The missing page was removed after Maravale challenged the king 6 centuries ago. Shortly afterward, the soul seal weakened, royal authority fractured, and Mara vanished from public record. "You make her sound responsible," Emily said. "I make her sound consequential. Those are not the same thing." Lucian's quiet response cut through the chamber. Seraphine turned toward him. "Your Majesty, if this bond deepens, the old choice may return. Preserve the soul seal and exercise the crown's claim, or break it and risk every protection tied to your throne." Emily felt the room tighten around that sentence. "What protections?" Lucian answered before the council could shape the truth. "The seal conceals our settlements, enforces peace among the oldest houses, and allows the crown to stop any royal order that would compel a person against their will." "By holding other souls against their will?" Emily asked. Pain crossed his expression. "That contradiction is why I have searched for another way." The oldest council member continued. "Until we recover the missing page, the safest course is to annul the silver anomaly and restore the contract to crimson." "What happens to Sophie's treatment?" Emily asked. "The care already delivered cannot be taken back," Lucian said. "Nor will I allow future care to be used as leverage." Seraphine's gaze sharpened. "You may not have that choice if the ancient law interprets annulment as rejection of the exchange." Emily stood. "Then you are asking me to gamble my sister's life because my signature made your council uncomfortable." "We are asking you to consider thousands of lives." "I have been considering another life every minute for 3 months. Do not confuse my lack of a title with an inability to understand stakes." The chamber fell silent. Lucian did not silence her or answer on her behalf. That mattered. Emily looked around the table. "Here is the truth. I did not come here to fulfill a prophecy or challenge a kingdom. I came because my sister was running out of time and I was terrified. I signed because I love her. If your law sees something dangerous in that, perhaps the danger is in the law." Warm light spread across her left hand. A silver symbol appeared beneath her skin, shaped like a rose enclosed by an open circle. Every candle in the chamber flared silver. The white volume turned pages by itself until it reached the torn edge where the missing clause should have been. Letters emerged across the empty margin. "The silver heart awakens when sacrifice speaks its whole truth." Several council members rose in astonishment. Lucian remained seated, but a matching light flashed briefly beneath the cuff at his wrist. Emily saw it before he pulled the sleeve down. He had promised to answer direct questions. She had not asked about his wrist yet, but the speed of that concealment unsettled her. Seraphine saw it too. "The bond has marked the king," she whispered. "Then the choice has already begun." The mark on Emily's hand faded to a pale outline, but the room did not relax. An attendant hurried through the doors carrying a sealed message. "Your Majesty, the Elder Court has crossed the northern boundary. Lord Alistair Blackwood claims he possesses Maravale's missing record." The oldest council member closed the white book. Seraphine looked from Lucien's hidden wrist to Emily's mark. "If he is telling the truth, then before sunrise one of two things will end: the silver bond or the crown as we know it." After the council dispersed, Emily followed Lucien into the moonlit garden rather than returning to her room. White roses climbed stone arches, and lanterns cast warm circles across the path. She waited until the chamber doors closed behind them. "Show me your wrist." Lucien did not pretend to misunderstand. He rolled back his cuff. The same silver rose rested beneath his skin. "When did it appear?" "The moment you signed." Emily's anger arrived quietly. "You had hours to tell me." "Yes." "Was that a lie?" He looked at the mark instead of defending himself. "Not in words. In purpose perhaps it was." The contract in Emily's hand brightened at his admission. "You made a rule about truth and then decided which truth I could handle. I believed the mark would place you in greater danger from the council. That explanation may be sincere. It does not make the decision yours." Lucien lowered his head. A king could have demanded forgiveness. He did not. "You are right." The simple apology disturbed her certainty more than an argument would have. They reached a terrace overlooking the lower gardens, where attendants gathered tools before the approaching dawn. An elderly gardener struggled with a heavy watering can. Emily set down the contract and lifted one handle. The gardener blinked in surprise. "Miss Carter, you do not need to do that. Neither do you alone." Together they carried it to the nearest bed of roses. Other attendants watched with the guarded curiosity of people accustomed to being overlooked. Emily asked their names and learned that some families had served Black Hollow voluntarily for generations. Others were descendants of people once bound by contracts Lucien had inherited. Their ancestors' service had ended, but their names remained in the royal ledger because the crown never removed anything easily. "Do you want to stay?" Emily asked the gardener. "I do," he said. "But wanting to stay should be what makes service honorable." Lucien heard him. The king's expression tightened with shame rather than anger. Emily understood then that Lucien's kindness did not excuse the institution he maintained, but his willingness to hear uncomfortable truth might allow him to change it. Her phone rang. Sophie's physician reported that the first treatment had gone as planned. Sophie remained seriously ill, and improvement would take time, but her vital signs were steadier. Emily sat on a stone bench as relief loosened something inside her. "I do not care what this contract does to me," she said. The mark on her hand turned cold. Lucien crouched several feet away, close enough to speak without invading her space. "That is not true." Emily pressed her palm against her knee. "My sister is alive. And you are allowed to want a life too. You do not know what I want. Then tell me." She almost repeated the lie. Instead, the only rule forced her to look beneath the version of courage she had worn for months. "I want to see Sophie finish college. I want one job instead of 3. I want to stop measuring every day by the next bill. I want to be loved without becoming another responsibility someone resents." Her voice broke, but she continued. "And I am afraid that selling my soul proved I never believed I deserved any of that." Lucien's eyes held no pity. "It proved that you love your sister. Nothing more. Sacrifice can be generous, Emily, but erasing yourself is not the same as love." "That sounds strange from the man holding my contract." "It should." He looked toward the manor. "That is the truth I have avoided for too long." Their eyes met, and for a moment the distance between them felt less like fear and more like a choice neither was ready to name. A deep horn sounded beyond the northern forest. Every lantern dimmed. Eleanor appeared at the terrace doors. "Lord Alistair has arrived under the Elder Court's seal," she said. "He brought Maravale's original testimony." Lucien rose. Then we will hear it together. Eleanor hesitated. There is more. The testimony says the king's rule of honesty was never meant to bind the silver heart alone. Emily picked up her contract. Silver words were spreading across its final page. It was written to place the king on trial, she read. From the courtyard below, the gates opened, and a procession entered carrying a locked silver archive that had not been seen in 6 centuries. Lord Alistair Blackwood entered the receiving chamber without guards at his side. He was tall, pale, and impeccably dressed in a charcoal coat embroidered with silver thread, but his manner held more caution than arrogance. He bowed to Lucian, then to Emily. I came as an archivist, not an accuser. Seraphine and the council stood along one side of the room. Eleanor remained near Emily. At the center table, Alistair unlocked the silver archive with 3 keys and removed a weathered journal, a royal ledger, and a sealed statement bearing Mara Vale's name. The official history claims Mara disappeared after weakening the soul seal, he said. That history is false. He opened the statement. Mara had entered a crimson bargain to save an entire village from a winter illness. Her contract turned silver because she had asked for nothing for herself. The king of that era gave her one rule. She could never lie to him. Over time, Mara discovered that the same rule bound him whenever her questions concerned the contract. She asked whether the soul seal protected the kingdom because it was necessary, or because rulers feared governing without magical obedience. The king answered honestly. Both reasons were true. What happened next? Emily asked. Alistair turned a page. Mara did not destroy the kingdom. She persuaded the king to release every soul then held by the crown. The old wards weakened for one winter, but the houses rebuilt them through voluntary oaths. Peace survived because people chose to preserve it. The soul seal itself remained, and after Mara retired from public life, the council restored its use, erased her achievement, and reopened the old bargains. Seraphine's face lost some of its certainty. Why would the council restore them? Because voluntary loyalty requires a ruler to keep earning it, Alistair said. Control is easier. No one answered. Lucian looked at the royal ledger. How many claims remain? 312, Alistair replied. Most belong to people who died long ago and still serve the crown's archive, border wards, and memory houses. They are not in physical torment, but they are not free to leave. Emily thought of the attendants in the garden. The system's polished language no longer softened what it did. And my contract? Still valid, Alistair said. The crown paid the price you requested. Unless Lucian releases the claim or the silver heart completes its challenge, your soul belongs to the crown after your natural death. The title of king suddenly sounded less romantic than it had beneath candlelight. Emily turned to Lucian. What does completing the challenge require? He looked at Alistair. The archivist opened Mara's journal to its final entry. The bearer may ask the king one complete question. He must answer with every material truth he knows. Then the bearer states what she chooses without deception. Finally, the king chooses whether to preserve the claim or release every soul bound to the same seal. Every soul, Seraphine repeated. Not only hers. Alistair nodded. That is why the page was removed. Emily remembered the flash beneath Lucian's cuff. She could ask about the mark, the throne, or why he had chosen her. A narrower question might protect him. It might also leave another dangerous silence. She faced him across the table. What have you withheld from me about this contract, the silver bond, and the choice it will force you to make? The room became perfectly still. Lucian could not retreat into careful answers now. When your signature turned silver, I recognized the mark, he began. I had found fragments of Mara's story decades ago. I knew a silver heart might force the crown to release every bound soul. I also knew the release would strip me of the soul seal's authority, weaken the border wards, and allow the council to challenge my right to rule. Emily held his gaze. What else? The matching mark means the contract measures not whether you are worthy of the crown, but whether I am worthy of your trust. His voice lowered. And I withheld that because I feared you would feel responsible for my throne. I told myself I was protecting you. In truth, I was also protecting myself from the possibility that you would ask me to become the king I claim to be. The contract flashed silver. No hidden line remained. Emily felt hurt, anger, and an unwanted tenderness all at once. Is there anything else? Yes. Lucian took a slow breath. I can release you before the challenge. Your sister's treatment will continue. But if I release only you, the other 312 claims remain, and the council can seal the record again. Seraphine stepped forward. If he releases everyone, our protections may fail before dawn. Alistair closed Mara's journal. Or the kingdom may learn whether it follows a king or merely obeys a seal. Emily asked the council for privacy before the final hearing. In the adjoining study she called Sophie. She did not describe ancient seals or vampire law to a woman beginning a difficult treatment, but she stopped pretending the funding had cost nothing. I made a promise to secure your care, Emily said. Now I have to decide whether to accept that promise as permanent. Sophie was quiet for several seconds. Did you make it because you thought my life mattered more than yours? Emily closed her eyes. At the time, yes. Then listen to me. I want to live, but I want my sister to have a life too. Whatever happens next, choose like you matter. The sentence settled inside Emily with more power than any prophecy. When she returned to the receiving chamber, only one fear remained unnamed. She looked at Lucian. Does the silver bond create affection or loyalty between us? No, he answered. It reveals truth and tests choice. It cannot manufacture either. Then what you feel is yours. Entirely. And what do you feel? Lucian could have hidden behind the coming hearing. The rule did not allow it. Hope when you enter a room. Shame when you see clearly what I have excused. And the beginning of something I will not call love until you are free to reject it. Emily's mark warmed. The answer was true. Will releasing the souls harm you? It will not end my life. It will remove the crown's power to compel, weaken the inherited wards, and place my throne before the council. I may lose the kingdom. He turned his marked wrist upward, offering the truth without defense. The final choice begins when you state what you want. This time, no one else will decide which truth you can bear. Dawn silvered the windows. The council bell rang. Emily picked up her contract knowing that her answer would test more than a king. It would reveal whether she had finally learned to value the life she had been willing to surrender. Emily stood before the council at the edge of dawn with her silver contract open in both hands. Beyond the tall windows, the sky had begun to pale, and the filtered glass softened the first light for the vampires gathered inside. Sophie's treatment was working. The hospital had confirmed that even if every Black Hollow account vanished, the full course of medication and follow-up care had already been placed in an independent trust. Lucian had arranged that protection before the hearing, removing her sister from the council's leverage. It did not erase the bargain Emily had made, but it allowed her next words to be truly hers. I would sign again to give Sophie that chance, she said. The contract glowed steadily. That is the first truth. The second is that I do care what happens to me. I want my future. I want my choices. I refuse to call love noble if it requires one person to become property. Several council members looked down. Emily turned toward Lucian. And I will not build anything with you while a debt owns part of me. Whatever I feel when I look at you must be free, or it is not worth trusting. The matching mark beneath his wrist brightened. Lucian's expression revealed the cost of hearing those words, and the relief of knowing they were honest. Seraphine addressed him. Your Majesty, preserve the soul seal and you preserve the authority that has kept our houses hidden for centuries. Release these claims and the wards may fall. The council will be entitled to review your crown. Lucian walked to the obsidian seal embedded in the center of the chamber floor. Then review it. He placed his palm over the carved rose. A throne that requires ownership of the innocent is already weaker than it appears. The oldest council member warned him that the act could not be reversed. Lucian looked first at Emily, then at the attendants, archivists, and house representatives filling the gallery. Emily Carter, I release every claim the crown holds upon you. I release the 312 souls recorded under this seal. From this hour forward, no aid, cure, protection, or royal favor may be purchased with a human soul. He did not shout. The words carried because the room had been waiting centuries to hear them. Silver. Light moved through the lines of the obsidian seal. It did not explode. It separated into hundreds of small points that rose like stars and passed harmlessly through the ceiling. Across the royal ledger, crimson marks faded one by one. The contract in Emily's hands became warm, then blank, leaving only her name and Lucien's written release. Far beyond the manor, the hidden wards flickered. For one breath, the distant city lights became visible through the mountain mist. Then new lines of light appeared along the valley as house after house renewed its protection voluntarily. Eleanor placed her hand over her heart. The elderly gardener did the same. Alistair spoke the first oath. I guard this kingdom because I choose to. Others repeated it. The new wards were softer than the old ones but steadier, built from consent rather than command. Seraphine watched the council's symbols dim upon the table. She could have demanded Lucien's immediate removal. Instead, she looked at the people offering loyalty without compulsion. The crown will be reviewed under a new charter, she said. Until that charter is written, Lucien Ashcroft remains king by the expressed will of the houses present. It was not a perfect victory. Several houses refused the oath. The border would require months of work. Lucien had lost the supernatural power to compel obedience, and every future decision would be harder. But difficulty was not collapse. It was responsibility. The silver mark on Emily's hand opened into a small white rose, then faded until only a faint outline remained. Lucien approached but stopped an arm's length away. You are free, he said. No triumph colored his voice. You may leave Black Hollow, return whenever you wish, or never see me again. Sophie's care remains protected. Emily studied the man who had once held her soul, and had surrendered the power to keep it. What do you want? She asked. Under the only rule that remained between them, he answered without hiding. I want you to stay. I want the chance to know you when neither magic nor desperation is making the choice. But wanting is not the same as asking you to sacrifice. Emily felt the truth of her own answer. Before speaking it, then do not ask me today. A trace of sadness touched his eyes, but he nodded. She stepped closer. Ask me when my sister is home, when your new laws are real, and when we have learned whether honesty can survive ordinary days. Hope replaced the sadness. I will. Her phone rang. Sophie was awake and asking for her. Lucien ordered no carriage, assigned no escort, and issued no command. He simply opened the door. Emily left because she chose her sister. For the first time, she also knew she could choose to return. 6 months later, Sophie walked out of St. Matthew's Rehabilitation Center carrying her own overnight bag. Recovery had not happened in a flash. It had required treatment, physical therapy, difficult mornings, and weeks when progress arrived in inches rather than miracles. But she was healthy enough to resume 2 college classes and strong enough to complain that Emily hovered too much. That complaint felt like a gift. The independent trust covered every remaining appointment exactly as promised. Emily returned to one steady job at the Black Hollow Foundation, where she helped families reach medical resources without bargains, secret conditions, or impossible deadlines. The foundation's new charter appeared in plain English on every application. Aid creates no personal debt. No life may be owned in exchange for hope. Emily had insisted on both sentences. Lucien had approved them without changing a word. He and Emily did not leap from crisis into romance. They spoke by phone. He visited the city in the evenings, always asking before coming. She returned to the manor for public meetings, then for dinners that had nothing to do with contracts. They disagreed about policy, laughed over his inability to understand grocery store loyalty points, and learned that honesty in ordinary life required more courage than honesty under magical enforcement. When Lucien withheld concern behind royal politeness, Emily called it what it was. When she pretended exhaustion did not matter, he reminded her that self-neglect was not proof of love. Neither used the rule as a weapon. They used it as a door they both had to keep choosing to open. The kingdom changed slowly. 11 houses signed the voluntary charter. 2 refused and left the royal alliance peacefully. The border wards were rebuilt through shared oaths rather than the sole seal. Seraphine remained on the council and became the most demanding editor of the new laws, which Emily respected more than easy agreement. Alistair restored Maravale's name to the public archive. Her true story ended not with disappearance, but with a long mortal life spent teaching rulers that loyalty could not be inherited like property. On the first cool night of the following October, Lucian invited Emily to the White Rose Garden. Sophie came with her, accepted Eleanor's tour, and then deliberately disappeared toward the kitchen so her sister could have privacy. Lucian waited beneath the same stone arch where Emily had once admitted that she wanted a future. He wore no ceremonial crown. "You told me to ask when Sophie was home, when the laws were real, and when honesty had survived ordinary days," he said. "All three are true." Emily smiled. "That sounds dangerously like preparation. I have had 6 months. He offered his hand, palm up, without closing the distance. "Stay at Black Hollow because you choose it. Continue challenging me because this kingdom needs your voice. And if your answer is freely given, stand beside me as my queen and my equal." Emily looked toward the manor. Its windows glowed gold against the deep blue mountains. The place no longer felt like the house where she had surrendered her future. It had become a place where hundreds of futures had been returned. "One condition," she said. Lucian's expression turned solemn. "Name it." "No hiding a truth because you think it will protect me." "Agreed. And the rule applies to me too. Especially then." Emily placed her hand in his. "My answer is yes." There was no storm, no command from destiny, and no contract waiting for her signature. The faint white rose beneath her skin warmed once, recognizing a choice that belonged entirely to her. Months later, Sophie stood beside Emily as the kingdom welcomed its first human queen in centuries. Emily accepted the title without surrendering her work, her name, or her right to disagree. Lucian did not make her powerful by choosing her. He made room for the power she already possessed. She had entered Black Hollow willing to sell her soul to save her sister. His only rule changed everything because it forced them both to face the truth. Love could inspire sacrifice, but it could never justify ownership. What endured between them was not a bargain, a prophecy, or a debt. It was the honest choice to remain, made freely again each day.